White evangelicals continue to stand out in their support for Trump. And I thought this was important to bring out. This came out April the 28th, 2025. And so the reason why I had looked this up is because I was laying, resting, scrolling through social media, and I saw an older boomer couple, and they were white, and they were talking about their parents and their experience here in the United States and their nationality, their background. They mentioned Irish and Swedish, and they mentioned a time where they weren't really considered an acceptable class of people, and they weren't even accepted as in the white majority. And they basically were talking to, I believe it was a woman that was in the background. She had a camera, and she was asking them about their previous experience and some of the people that they have associated with in their circle, their white associates, friends. And they said they're okay with learning about the realities of one day becoming no longer a majority class. And they admitted that white is not a culture. It's just basically a concept that was brought up about a color of a person's skin. So they said they didn't feel uncomfortable. However, they said they do know people who felt very uncomfortable about learning that they will soon no longer be the majority class or majority group. And so when I saw this article here, it made me really think about what has been going on so far with all of the changes that have been happening. If you've really been paying attention, a lot of these things are aimed at hurting people of color, people who are not, seen as white or don't identify as white. Excuse me, I'm just getting over, we're at the end of the year and we're starting a new year pretty soon, and some people are going to try to do things that are festive, but I think that 2025 has not been a very great year for a majority of people who have experienced some changes because of the administration that we're under. So I looked this article up, and it says that white evangelicals continue to stand out in their support for Trump. And I particularly understand the reason, because there's a lot of fear. If you've always been told all your life that you're superior and that you're the better class or the more sophisticated or you're more educated or you have inventors and doctors and lawyers and educated people and you're more superior over other groups, you have privileges or you have advantages in most of your life, you hadn't had to really worry about a certain set of experiences that other groups have. And then to learn that one day, with all of this could change because of no longer being looked at as the majority class. It will bring fear to some of those who have always held on to those beliefs. And I believe you see these people here, some of them are young, some of them are older, and they've passed on a lot of those beliefs to their children, to their grandchildren, and so on. And then their children's are passing it on to their children. And you're going to have some that follow this, a majority that will follow this, because some of this is not just wrapped up in just race alone. There's also money involved, power, class, status, or however you want to look at it, like your status in society. And so when you fear no longer being looked at as the majority, you fear that you're going to lose power, you're going to lose a status in society, in social structures that have basically held you up for many, many decades. So roughly 3 months into President Donald Trump's second term, white evangelical Protestants, they continue to be among the strongest supporters. So it even gives percentages. It has some graphs, and I don't know if you can see them, but I'm gonna go back up to where the article is. It comes from out of the Pew Research Center. And a lot of times Pew Research, they do like a research statistics, and they have a lot of graphs, and they have a lot of data and projected projected outcomes of what could be in demographics based on different topics. So here it says 72% approve of the way that Trump is currently handling his job as a president. Excuse me. So 69% rate the ethics of top Trump administration officials as excellent or good. 57% say that they trust what Trump says more than what previous presidents have said. So those are some high percentages, really high percentages, high enough. So here's a closer look at how white evangelicals and other major U.S. religious groups view second term of the Trump administration based on the Pew Research Center. This is a survey. So it's 3,589 U.S. adults that they conducted this. So approvals of Trump's, it gives clear majorities of white evangelicals approve of Trump's handling of the job. So most white evangelicals, they are 72%. They say they approve how Trump is handling his job as a president. White, non-evangelical Protestants and white Catholics are much more divided, though. So with a 51% in each group approving of the job that Trump is doing. So by contrast, majorities of black Protestants, Hispanic Catholics, and religiously unaffiliated adults, people who describe themselves religiously as atheists, agnostic, or nothing in particular, say they disapprove of how Trump is handling his presidency. So these religious patterns largely reflect partisan differences. So white evangelicals overwhelmingly identify or learn Republican, as do smaller majorities of white non-evangelical Protestants and white Catholics. By contrast, most black Protestant, Hispanic Catholics, religiously unaffiliated adults are Democratic-leaning independents. So there is a related, I guess, article about this, evaluations of his job approval and confidence on issues. And so it goes into even deeper details. It has more statistical or percentage datas showing the point drops among white evangelicals, which is only 6 points, 8-point drop among black Protestants, an 8-point drop among white Catholics, and a 7-point drop among religiously unaffiliated Americans. which is roughly 33% to 26%. So both among the U.S. public as the whole and among major religious groups, Trump currently, his approval ratings are on par with what they are around the same time in his first term. So really, I could go on and go down more and more about all of this. I don't think it goes any further, but you can see the graphs here. It shows the trust in what Trump says. It also shows 7 in 10 whites evangelicals rate the ethics of Trump administration officials as excellent or good. Now, you might add, why would they rate him so high? Being that so, we're seeing things that seem contradictory to these ratings, things that look like they're harming communities. But you got to look at the communities that they're harming and the people that they're targeting. So when you're looking at these percentages here, so I particularly wanted to focus here, in addition to approving of Trump's job, 57% of white evangelical Protestants say that they trust what he says more than what previous presidents have said while in office. An additional 23% say they trust Trump's words about the same as those of previous presidents, while 19% say they have less trust in Trump's what he says. So non-evangelical Protestants and white Catholics are roughly split on trust in Trump's words. About 4 in 10 in each group say that they trust more than previous presidents, while roughly the same share that they trust him less. So about 2 in 10 in these groups say that they trust Trump's words about the same in those in previous presidents. So majorities of black Protestants, 65%, religiously unaffiliated adults, 64%, say they trust what Trump says less than what previous presidents have said in office. I thought this was significant to bring out before I go to this next article that I felt was very on point as to why we're going through what we're going through in these current times. So this is out of UCLA newsroom. Soon to become a minority in the U.S., whites express declining support for diversity. UCLA psychology study, it finds. So this is Stuart Wolpert. This was in October the 2nd of 2014. So this was, even then, this was when this was occurring. So they already had in the works that they were going to start changing things. So I wanted to bring it back to this year here so you can see just how far along this was going. So they already were planning what we're dealing with right now in 2025 going into 2026. So white Americans may view diversity and multiculturalism more negatively as the U.S. moves toward becoming a minority-majority nation. So UCLA psychologists report this. So as part of their study, the research divided 98 white Americans from all regions of the country. Half are male, half are female, with an average of an age of 37 years old, randomly into two groups. One group was told that whites will no longer be the majority of the U.S. by 2050. In fact, this is likely to be true as soon as 2043. So when they heard this, according to some projections, the second group was told that whites would retain their majority status in the U.S. throughout at least till about 2050. All participants were then asked a serious question about how they felt about these views on diversity. And so whites feel lukewarm about diversity when they are told that they are about to lose their majority status in the U.S. for the first time. So Yen Ho, UCLA professor of psychology, the study's senior author, Using a 7-point scale, 1 meant strongly disagree and 7 meant strongly agree. So subjects were asked how much they agreed or disagreed with the statement. So one of the goals of our country should be to teach people from different racial, ethnic, cultural backgrounds how to live and work together, and Americans should understand the differences in backgrounds, experiences, and can lead into different values and ways of thinking. So those who believe whites would continue to be the majority gave an average of response of 5.67. Okay, so while those who believe that whites would no longer be the majority gave an average response of just 5.15, we see a significant reduction in the endorsement of diversity when white Americans are exposed to the current projections of the future demographics. This was said by Felix Danbold, a UCLA psychology doctoral student and the paper's lead author. So most Americans view diversity in positive terms, but many white Americans who see the actual demographic projections and the loss of their majority status end up being less enthusiastic about it. And so those in the study who identified themselves as Republicans gave an average response of 4.5 compared to 5.8 for Democrats and 5.7 for independents. So 36% participants Democrats, 21% were Republican, and 31% were independents. So support for diversity was also higher among women, with an average response of 5.7, and men's average response was 5.1. So the researchers say the results are related to whites' feelings threatened in a way that is distinct from their concerns about economic competition and clashing cultural values. So they concluded that the demographic change are threatening whites' sense that they best represent the American identity. So whites have long benefited from being seen as the ethnic group that best represents what it means to be an American, said Ho, a faculty member of UCLA College. So thinking about a future in which whites are no longer a numerical majority threatens this claim in an American identity, and we have found results in reluctance to embrace diversity and greater support for newcomers to assimilate to American society. So the threat to identity, Danbold said, is often overlooked in discussions about any whites are uneasy about changing demographics. So in the second study, researchers showed that whites who perceived that the relative size of their ethnic group was rapidly declining also expressed a greater interest in having other ethnic groups assimilate to their own. So the researchers again explain this reaction as whites defending their group as best representing what America stands for. So in this study involving 194 white Americans with the same gender split, same median age, geographic profile as the first, researchers also asked how well different ethnic groups represent the values and ideals of America. So 73% rated whites significantly higher than other ethnic groups as best representing America. So just 27% viewed African American, Asian American, Latino American, and white American, America's 4 largest ethnic groups, as equally representative of American values and ideas. So that's a lower percentage. So the highest percentage was 73%, which was looked at as whites representing America. So those who felt that all ethnic groups represent America equally well support diversity when thinking about their group's declining share of the U.S. population. So participants also were asked how strongly they agreed or disagreed with statements including the growth of other ethnic groups has increased the tax burden on members of many ethnic groups. Social services have become less available to members of of my ethnic group because of my growth or other ethnic groups. And on a scale from 1 to 5, 5 represented the strongest agreement, and the average score was 3.04. So the research was published online as well, so you can see it at your leisure. But this was what I thought I would talk about, because when I was looking at social media, this boomer couple was talking about they had friends that had real fears about becoming the minority group as white Americans, and they didn't really feel comfortable about diversity, and they weren't happy really with it because they feel like they benefited from being who they are and the status, the power, and being white, or the white class, or the white majority. And that in it alone has power behind it, and also money is involved. So it's not just race, it's race and money, and class and social status and power. And so with that being said, I felt like this was important to bring that out. Now, I have seen articles where some white people were angry about some of these articles coming out and revealing the fears, and some of them were trying to send like maybe opinion pieces or rebuttals or backlash because they don't want to reveal what they're most afraid of. And I believe we're seeing it in real time with this presidency. And also I want to add that religion, I know some people like to stand behind religion, and we have other groups that stand behind religion, but religion harbors racism, it harbors division, it harbors hate, it also harbors class, it harbors greed. And so people need to be realistic. A lot of these religions that were taught to a lot of people, and I remember growing up as early in the Midwest as a kid, all around white people, you weren't looked at as being valued as a black person. The only person they ever mentioned to us that had any significance was Martin Luther King, and it was very watered down. And you didn't know anything about your culture. You didn't know anything about who you were as a person and what values you had. The only people I remember them ever mentioning was Martin Luther King, and they didn't really mention Rosa Parks. I didn't really hear about her until I got a lot older, and all of the other black people who contributed to society in America. And there was only one other guy that I heard about, and I believe he was the guy that invented medicine with the peanut. I can't say his name off the top of my head because I'm more concerned about these articles. What I was going to say also to add to this is a lot of these different groups that are coming out here, I feel like they've kind of latched on to some of these ideologies. So that's why when I had experiences out here, when I did come to be out here and be around other people who look like me, but they claim they're not black, I felt racism from them. They gave me a hot button racism, and a lot of it was things that they heard about people here in America, and they just tried to latch on to the white adjacent mentality. A lot of groups have done that. I've gotten that hatred from people that are black, but they claim they're not black and they're from the islands. People that are from other countries that clearly they're not white, but they latch on to those ideologies. So I've gotten that like that pushback, or that like prejudice, more like prejudice, or we gotta latch on to this. We're all these other things, but we're not black. We don't have any African blood in us. We don't identify, even though I'm looking at people that look like a mirrored image of who I am. And I just couldn't understand it until later. I started reading more and more and more about like how people have so many insecurities, and they latch on. Groups that come here tend to latch on to these ideologies because they feel like it's going to give them status, power, money, and recognition in these countries, and they'll be able to succeed better than this other group is succeeding, and they fear that they're going to be discriminated, and they feel like in order to latch onto these ideologies, they're better than this group. Oh, we're not like them. We're not like those black people. We're not like this group. We're different, And so they feel like that's going to bring them money, that's going to bring them status, that's going to bring them some kind of class over another group, a class status. So all of this is very damaging to everyone and straight across the board. So I realized that I started getting more educated when I got out of school than when I was in school. And I'm just, to be honest with you, I feel like you got to watch these schools too, because a lot of times they only teach you Western history and they don't teach you about who you are as a person and what has happened and the harms that have been done to people of different groups. And we're seeing things that are really, really troubling. I also am kind of like adding little things in here and pieces as we go. I saw something where, I know some people are not that happy with Karen Bass. She represents California, Democratic. So I'll put her out here. She's an American politician, the 43rd mayor of LA. So she recently, mentioned it might be current in the news, where she got backlash because she responded and made a comment, and you'll see it here. It says she faces backlash and criticism criticizing Hispanic border patrol agents. And the reason why, which I don't disagree with her comment, because it doesn't really well, I understand in the way she put it. She said, I see that you're doing it for financial gain. So that's their reasoning for doing it. And we have it in all of our groups. We've seen things here where people that look like us from our nationality or makeup background, they kind of support Trump, or they're, we've seen it in rallies where they claim they're black Trump supporters and things like that. So it's the same thing in the Hispanic cultures, where now you see people are, going in hiding. They can't work at jobs because they raid the jobs. They raid these places. They can't get health care. They're afraid to sign applications because they can put their information out and find out where they live and get deported. They can't go to courts. They can't do anything. They're afraid of everything. And then here you got these same people that you would think, I guess I'm assuming that they're American Hispanic people or whatever. And so they have some kind of birth citizenship here. So they are working for Border Patrol as Border Patrol agents, and they're actually deporting their people of their same background. The only difference is that maybe they don't have the citizenship, and that's probably the only difference, or they weren't born here in the States. And so Karen Bass made a comment that it was sad to see people of the same background, just like I was saying, of the same background or same makeup almost, turn around and do a disservice to their people of their own culture. And I agree with that. I mean, it's sad. It is sad to see that, but I'm not surprised, because we've seen recently and we've heard the comments that Nicki Minaj has made. Even though she's not born here, she's not a citizen here, but she has said some really negative stuff, which brings me back to what I've experienced. Is it validates the experiences I've had with people from other countries. She's from Trinidad and Tobago, so that's an island, right? They come here sometimes and they'll say, I'm not black, I'm American, or I'm this and I'm that. And here she is, she's not even a citizen here. She is probably here on a green card or visa or whatever. So people have chimed in about a lot of their dissent about the comments and the things that she's made towards black women and towards people of LGBT background. She's made some really, really disparaging comments that have rubbed many people the wrong way. And she's also made some comments that seem really awkwardly odd. What we're looking at here is the possibility of what I know I've heard is that she may be doing this for financial gain. She may be doing this because she's trying to get her husband maybe pardoned from his charges, her brother pardoned from his charges because they are registered sex offenders. Also, for her LA mansion, I believe she has a mansion here in California, and there's been talk that there's a lawsuit going on, and it has something to do with some incidents and wrapping around. I believe it might involve her husband as well, and her, whatever. She was supposed to pay some money, and she hasn't paid the money in the lawsuit, so now they want to put a lien on her mansion, and they just may well do that. So a lot of financial gain, a lot of things she might be doing leaning towards the right Republican ideology to try to get out of her own drama. And so we've seen this time and time again, and this is not just her. We've seen other people from the black communities do things because they grift, is what the word is, where they try to get things for financial gain. And so this is really alarming. We're seeing a lot of this happening, but we're also noticing that a lot of these things were in the works. This was an article that was put out back in 2014. What year is it right now? 2025, and we're going into 2026, and this fear was already being talked about back then. So how many years ago was that? And I think it was even further than this. And so if you even look, I remember seeing articles in the Pew Research where there were statistical data talking about whites being no longer the majority, being the minority class. And so when people hear or see things like that, because they're big on statistical data and facts and this, that, and a lot of times they get in the comments and they jump in there and they'll argue, oh, we need to see statistical data, we need to see this, we need to see facts and this, that, and the other. But when they saw these type of things, it was alarming, it was scary, it was making them afraid. We're no longer the majority, we're going to be a smaller group in the Americas. We're the face of America. How could this be? So now, when they had Obama, they had to, and then Joe Biden, they had to figure out how to, change all of these laws, change all of these rules. We see a lot of executive orders being put forth, a lot of changes in the school districts. The school districts are weakening, where a lot of schools have closed because they're withholding money from school districts. Yes, I'm adding a lot of information in here, maybe some of the stuff that's not even covered in these articles, and I've been really paying attention to what's going on. It's alarming. Also, potential World War III looming because of the tariff and the trade wars, and now all these other countries are fighting back, where they're revoking all the visas from American citizens. So if you don't think I'm telling the truth, look up the revoking of American visas from a lot of the states, or a lot of the, not states, I'll say, a lot of the countries and a lot of the foreign countries that people go to school, they do trade, they do business in. That is going to affect American economy and the American society at whole. And so where is a lot of this coming from? And I have to say, this is why I don't really want to align myself with these type of groups, because it is coming from largely white evangelicals that continue to stand out in their support for Trump. And a lot of this religion has been beat into people to where they can't even see clear anymore. It's like one big huge cult. And if you say anything against religion, people take it personal and they get really emotional and they get charged over it, not realizing the very religions that you support have caused so much harm in our society, because that's where your hatred comes in. That's where your division comes in. That's where your blaming comes in. That's where misogyny even comes in. Treating women as they're like second class or less. That's where a lot of this, men have to make the rules of everything. That's where a lot of this comes in. Divisions. You don't see anybody. I remember being a kid growing up. I was growing up in the Catholic religion. A lot of the biblical figures, the nativity scenes, everybody looks white. You don't see anything that represents you whatsoever. You don't hear any stories that represent you, or they're not told to you in that fashion. And so that is the reason why I cannot align myself with anything like that. And I'll be honest with you, relationships, it affects relationships. That's the reason why the marriages are splitting. People can't be together. They can't socialize. You can't even have friends anymore because of the ideologies and the beliefs that people have, because you don't know what people are believing in, if it's going to be harmful and how it's going to affect you. And it winds up affecting you in a negative fashion to where it's very harmful and it's hurtful. And they're either blaming you for something that you have no knowledge of, or you had nothing to do with, or you had no control over. It's also affecting you as well, and they can't see that. They also put you down for who your interests, or what your beliefs, your set of belief, or your experiences may be different set of experiences than them. They can't see past that. They can't put themselves in your shoes. You can put yourself in their shoes, but they have trouble putting themselves in your shoes. It makes you distance yourself from a lot of people. And so I've experienced that personally. So I have to be honest and say that it causes you to no longer want to be bothered with too many people and just want to focus on yourself. Focus on your sanity. Focus on self-care. Focus on self-peace. Focus on being a person of trust for yourself, because you trust yourself, you trust your judgment, you trust what you believe in, even if other people think you're crazy. So I know this is a lot that I'm saying, but I will say also again, not everybody is bad, but you do find a majority of people have different, and I feel like racism comes in different levels too, because we have subtle racism, and then we have overt racism, covert racism, hidden racism. Racism is everywhere. It's on the jobs, it's in the schools, it's in even the universities, it's in nursing, it's in the healthcare, it's in every facet of life in American way that we live. And it is the beginning of America. It is part of the fabric of America. Racism has started before we even were born here. It has started. So you cannot talk about all of these different institutions without bringing up the harm that it has caused to so many Black Americans that are here, and people that are of Native and Indigenous groups. So with that being said, I'm going to let this go, but I felt like this is the very big reason. Here, if you look at the articles here, it says Trump's tariffs, one big beautiful bill, faced more opposition than support as his job ratings had slipped. Trump's job ratings drops. Key policies draw majority disapproval as he nears 100 days. This was early on when he started in 2025, and it talked about how some people, public anticipates changes with Trump's, but is split over whether they will be good or bad. So there was so much. There's even up till now, what we recently dealt with. There was a bombing on Christmas Day in a part of Nigeria based on what? Christianity, religion. Once again, I can't align myself with it. I am so sorry for those people who are deeply rooted in religion. I have family that is rooted in religion, but I cannot align myself with it. I've seen so many things that have been caused so much harm, so much hatred in it, and I can't align myself with people who are so strongly hateful, rather than very contradictory about the thing they claim that they're standing for, but they're doing so much to hurt so many with just a stroke of a pen. So voting, they may not be putting people in shackles. We may not be, tied together. We may not be in like shanty houses, but we do have what, like in the Great Depression, they had Hoovervilles. We have Skid Row. We have a lot of the homeless crisis going on. We have gentrification going on. We have the pricing out of low-income families. A lot of that is harming poor white people, people that are poor, that are of color, Hispanic, black, all of the different demographics all straight across the board. If you don't have the money, then you don't have the luxury of even basic necessities of living in a home that is affordable, that your family and you can thrive. Okay, so we don't have the white picket fence in the house, but make homes affordable that people can at least go to work, because most of the jobs that prop up the people who are the wealthy or ultra wealthy, the people who are on the lower income earning spectrum, are the ones that need to have sustainable housing so they can continue to do the work. We're holding these people up, and that's what's been happening. And I see that as a huge problem, because now greed is taking hold on top of the racism and the hatred that has been festering for so long, and religion is lumped into there. For so long they said we're going to separate state and religion, but it isn't never been, in my looking at and observing it from this lens, it has never really been separated. It has been intertwined all along, and now they want to put religion in the schools, but they want to make kids dumbed down, not educated, and not strive for what their abilities really entail. They want to make it so that they privatize schools that have the better teachers, that have the better books, that have the better opportunities for a group of kids or a class of kids that are raised in households that have more income. And those who have less income, you have bad books, not really great opportunities, maybe less opportunities, less funding, maybe less less chance of even getting educated, and maybe poor schools or poor quality of education. And so there's been so much infighting with different cultures of people. People can't get along because they have these petty differences, and they can't see past those petty differences to see that there's something bigger here that works against all of us. And it is not bringing any joy in any of these communities. It is not building these communities up. It is basically trying to erase people to the point to where people are almost living near the poverty level, or if not below the poverty level, even worse. And so this does not bring anything good. And the more we keep this president in office and these people doing what they're doing, it's going to get worse. And I'm just telling you that from what I've been seeing. I haven't been seeing it great for people of color. This Make America Great Again was Make America Great for white people of white stature, power, class, where they have more money, or they have more, they want to hoard their money. They move away from people of color. They move away from cities where they think there's a majority of people who look different than them, and they want to live next to only white people in a white community that has a covenant where you, as a person of color, can't move in there. If you have money, you feel like you're the outsider, and they make you feel that way. Certain people will make you feel that way, and they ask questions, and it's racist, or they haven't had much exposure to people that are different backgrounds. They don't go to your businesses and patronize you. They don't put money in your communities. They move away. They pull all the money out of and the resources out of these communities, so that you see all of these boarded up businesses, homes, empty apartments where people can't afford to live, but you have all down below these apartments and around in the surrounding areas makeshift Hoovervilles, like the Great Depressions, almost like the stock market crash that happened in the late 20s and 30s. where money was no longer a thing. If you don't have it, you can't get blood out of a turnip. So this right here, it just shows you the very people that drop to their knees and they pray. Like I told you, they were at a CPAC convention. They were rubbing a statue of Trump, rubbing him. They look at him like he's a god, like he was sent. Some of them believe that he was sent. Religiously, they believe that he was sent to make the changes so it can prop up their culture and who they are and their status in society so that they can remain the majority group. And so I'm going to end this, but it's sad to see that people can't get along. They can't see past these differences and these fights. I knew that this president was not going to be for all people. He was going to be for a select group of people. And so I never voted for him the first term and the second term. And he's even trying to enact something, which I heard from someone, that he's trying to make it so that we never vote for any more presidents and that he remains the president. And so they've been praying for our downfall for a long time. The prayers and the people that they worship are not of a good thing. There's also other gods. There's the gods of evil. There are spirits of evil. And these people pray and drop to their knees for the downfall of other people so that other people won't feel free, that you won't have advantages, that you won't ever rise to the occasion, that you won't ever get peace, that you'll always be someone that they'll have underneath their heel and foot.